Hello, welcome to Spotlight on Souris. My name is Laura Higgs, and today I am privileged to have with me Jean Dornian, who is the author of this book called Musings. And Jean is here to join us and tell us a little bit about her book. Now, Jean, your book is your poetry, right?
Yes.
Okay, so welcome here. Thank you for coming in. How did you get started writing poems?
Well, I wasn't really interested in poetry. It was the strangest thing. Everybody was looking at poetry books, and Mother was looking at poetry books, and I wasn't the least bit interested. But then, all of a sudden, one day, I was in the waiting room at the hospital, waiting for her to see a new doctor, and the new doctor had to read through Mother's files, and there were a lot of files, and we were bored. And my mother was bored, and we would hear footsteps coming down the hall. We were in an outpatient's room, but they would just go on by. And all of a sudden, Mother just started to say, "Footsteps, footsteps, to and fro. Here they come, and there they go." And then she added another couple of lines, and then I started to add a line, and then she would add another line, and the first thing you know, we had a lot of lines. But then the doctor came, and that was good. We were so glad to see her. We were there about an hour. And somehow or another, that opened a floodgate. And from then on, I was interested. I went home and I wrote the whole thing down, and I gave it to someone to type, and put it on the hospital bulletin board.
Nice.
And it was in a newsletter a couple of years later, and that was the start. And from then on, it was just, like I said, a floodgate opening. And I started to rhyme about everything. And I would do stories, I would do incidents, whatever it was, I was rhyming. And so that's how it began.
Wow. Well, did you have a favorite poem when you were growing up?
You know, when I think about it, it was The Night Before Christmas.
Ah, very nice.
And whoever wrote that never expected it would take off like it did.
Sure did.
But yes, it really did take off.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay. Did you read poems to your children?
I was thinking about that, and then I thought, yes, I did. I read Dr. Seuss.
Yes, well,
Now,
incredible
Dr.
poet.
Seuss, the Jed is in bed, and the bed of the Jed is the softest of beds in the world, it is said. He makes it from pom-poms he grows on his head, and now he's asleep on the softest of fluff, completely exhausted from growing the stuff. So yes, I did have poetry in my childhood.
Oh, that's good. When did you commit to writing poems weekly?
Mr. Jacobson had a column in the Plain Dealer called Jake Says. I had started putting the odd poem in the paper because I would be writing something about something interesting, and people would say, well, you should put that in the paper.
Because it was a current event or
Because it
something
was a
happening.
current event, yes. And so then it just kind of followed naturally that when Jake died, there was the space had to be filled, and the editor was used to having it filled without any effort on her part. And so I kind of was just there, and I filled that spot.
Okay, were you able to have some poems written ahead of time then?
I did have some ahead of time, but mostly I talked about current things, I guess, and about the weather. There was always something to talk about the weather.
Always.
And events. But sometimes I would hear a funny story, and I'd make it into a poem. And there was just enough humor and there was just enough surprise in the element that people started looking for it. They never knew what it was going to be about.
Oh, okay. So did you get lots of positive feedback? Did you get any negative feedback?
No, I didn't, and it's surprising that I didn't, because I wrote about some controversial things. There was one time, Claire Brown was an addict of my poems, and he met me in the grocery store one morning, and he said, "What did you mean by this?" And I was able to explain it to him to his satisfaction, and that was good.
That is very nice. When you put your heart and your soul into something that you've written down, people can interpret it differently. So
Yes.
it's very interesting that he
Yes.
asked you that question. But were you ever challenged then, writing on specific topics?
No, I can't say that I was.
They all just came
Yes. No,
off your silver tongue.
I wasn't ever given negative feedback.
But the challenge sometimes is there to write, because rhyming with certain words in certain situations can be sometimes pretty tough.
Yes, yes. There was one I wondered, because I had to go through hundreds of poems to pick ones that I would use. And there was one about an incident that I really wondered about, but I put it in, and it was about people being afraid of dogs and having a couple of dogs shot that really were there was no reason that should have happened.
Mm.
So it was just beware, be careful.
Yeah,
be careful.
Careful,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Did you limit yourself to local events then in your poems?
No, I didn't. I limited myself to whatever was on my mind at the time I was writing them.
Okay.
I guess.
So you could have been listening to current events on the news or something for the province.
No, it wouldn't have been. It would have been local. It would have
okay.
been. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, all local events then.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have amount of space you had to, when you're doing your weekly, did you have so many words you could?
Anybody that does a column has a certain space that they have to fill in.
Right.
But I wasn't ever disciplined to that. Whatever I wrote, they found
Made
a place
room for.
Yes, they did.
That's good.
I must have been a nuisance lots of times, but they did it. Yeah.
Okay. Were you ever asked to commemorate special events?
I can remember when we had the opening of the new swinging bridge, and I wanted to go to that, but it was a rainy day. So I took the car up close to the bridge early, but the events were at the other end of the bridge. Well, I went to the other end of the bridge, and it was raining really hard by then, but the proper speeches had been said, and so I said, I would like to read a poem. I took the initiative lots of times. I wasn't ever asked to do anything. I wasn't that known. Anyway, I did the poem, and I walked across the swinging bridge, and by the time I got home, I was soaking wet. But the poem was done.
Yeah, okay. To commemorate that special event of the opening.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of poems give you the most satisfaction?
The tribute poems, the good things. I love to write about good things. Yes,
Yeah.
that gives me the most satisfaction.
Yeah. Nice, very nice. What did you hope to gain by publishing your book, Jean?
I hope to get the encouragers off my back.
Off your back?
No, not really. I knew that they meant well.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I had time to do that. So I allowed myself to say the word publish. I had a cousin in Winnipeg who had just published a little book, but it was so nice, and there was even my picture in it, and a little bit about his growing up and having me visit. And so for Gary's sake, when he phoned, and he phones regularly, I said, I think I'll start to work on the book. And immediately his voice perked up and he said, oh, that's wonderful. So with that initial encouragement, and then he and his wife were visiting. And his wife, it was a second marriage for both of them. They had each lost their spouses and they had blended families. His wife was a PhD, and she was a teacher at Winnipeg, the University of Manitoba. And she said, just as she was going out the door, I want to come for your book launch. Well, it never occurred to me to have a book launch. I thought I was doing well to have it published, let alone launching it. But with those words in mind, I did plan a book launch, just because my sister, who lives in Winnipeg, had two granddaughters that were coming to visit, and she thought they should see a book launch, and so we managed to do it. Everything just came together, just as if it was supposed to.
Did you write anything new for your book, or did you go through your years and years of catalogs looking for your favorite?
I did write a few things new,
Okay.
just in introducing things and
Okay.
whatnot, yes.
All right.
So I had played out in writing, and so I just had quit. But then when George died, I wrote a poem, and I felt that I just finished it the morning of the internment, but I didn't think I could read it. But my daughter-in-law said, I can read that. So that was the reawakening, I guess, of the poems. And then I wrote another poem when he died. Mm-hmm. And so then in writing this, I sometimes edited with poetry and whatnot. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the book launch was very successful. It was a good time, and you read quite a few of your poems from your book out loud for us. Mm-hmm. And actually you read a couple of good tributes too, to people who are with us in the audience as well.
Yes. It was Ralph Whitfield's 95th birthday.
Yes.
And he was just beaming. He was in such good spirits that day, and Pam had brought him. When I told her, she said, we've arranged a family telephone conversation. As soon as that's over, I will bring him.
Okay.
So she did, and it was just a lovely time, and everybody there loved Ralph. There was a feeling of love in the air. So many people knew so many people, mm-hmm. and it was a time, and Grant Jackson sang, and it was just so lovely. He had a 4-hour drive after that to get where he was going, but he still stayed and did that. Yes.
Yeah.
That was a lovely gift.
Yes, and it was a lovely afternoon for
Mm-hmm.
sure, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Well, congratulations, Jean, on your publishing your book called Musings. And it's been over quite a number of years. All these poems have been put together, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, almost your lifetime. Almost. You said you took it up later when your mom was when you were young with your mom, but it didn't come natural originally, did it?
No, not
like
naturally.
Your mother.
No,
Mm-hmm.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was very pleasant being with you again, Laura.
Good.
One of the things I was hoping to talk about and had forgotten was that I had a limerick written for me. A limerick is a certain kind of poem with a certain rhythm. And I had actually some relatives visiting in Ireland, and they stopped at a little town called Limerick, and they were told to write a limerick. And the tour person would read all of the limericks at once for everybody to hear. And so they wrote a limerick for me. There once was a lady named Jean who on poetry was so very keen, writing one every day, come what may, her book will now realize her dream. And that was really neat to have a limerick written for you at Limerick. Mm-hmm. But I remembered a limerick. A smiling young lady of Niger went out for a ride on a tiger. They returned from a ride with the lady inside and the smile on the face of the tiger.
Thank you so much, Jean, for sharing those with us. Thank you very much for joining us here at Spotlight on Souris. Have a wonderful day.